Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garden, and on these podcasts, as we do with each and every one of them, we talk about the Trump administration, the Republican Party, and just some of the breaking news that's going on. So having said that, let's go ahead and, get into it so we can kind of figure out what we need to talk about on this show. And we're going to start off with John Bolton. And as you know, that's kind of like late breaking news. So let's kind of go ahead and get into that right now. As you know, John Bolton was in the Trump administration's first go-around. And what has happened is that federal agents busted into Bolton's house in Bethesda, Maryland, just recently, and it was around 7 a.m. local time a couple of days ago. And an investigation which was ordered by the FBI Director Kash Patel, and who also, of course, as most of these people in the Trump administration do, took to social media with a cryptic post, and minutes later it said, "No one is above the law." And hashtag FBI agents on a mission. He wrote without directly referencing the raid, of course. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino also shared the post and wrote, "Public corruption will not be tolerated." And meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi also warned America's safety isn't negotiable and justice will be pursued, always. Trump told reporters that he saw the raid on television just this past Friday and morning and said he did not know any details about the investigation. Wink, wink, wink. He's not a smart guy, he said about Bolton, but he could be very unpatriotic as well. I mean, we're going to have to find out. I know nothing about it. I just saw it this morning. Watch this clip.
Have you been briefed on the FBI raid of John Bolton, sir?
No, I don't know about it. I saw it on television this morning. I'm not a fan of John Bolton. He's a real sort of a lowlife. He could be a very unpatriotic guy. I mean, we're going to find out. I know nothing about it. I just saw it this morning. They did a raid.
Do you expect the DOJ to brief you on this?
Yeah, they'll brief me. Probably today sometime. When I hired him, he served a good purpose because, as you know, he was one of the people that forced Bush to do the ridiculous bombings in the Middle East. Bolton, he wants to always kill people, and he's very bad at what he does, but he worked out great for me because every time he doesn't talk, he's like a very quiet person, except on television. If he could say something bad about Trump, he'll always do that, but he really doesn't talk, he's quiet. I tell Pam and I tell the group, I don't want to know, but just you have to do what you have to do. I don't want to know about it. It's not necessary. I could know about it. I could be the one starting it. I'm actually the chief law enforcement officer, but I feel that it's better this way.
So CIA Director John Ratcliffe provided Patel with limited access to U.S. intelligence that served as a basis for the search warrant, a source familiar with Bolton's raid, and the evidence used to justify it. I can't give any more detail, he said to the media on that. Let's just say John Bolton really had a nerve to attack Trump over his handling of classified information. And a staffer said that when they picked up the phone with this person, a journalist who was getting this information, and then he said, "Have a nice day," and hung up quickly. The probe into classified documents was first launched years ago, but later shut down by the Biden administration for political reasons, according to a senior U.S. official. The Justice Department, under Trump's first administration, argued that Bolton's 2020 memoir, The Room, Where It Happened, which is sold, he sold quite a few books on that, contained classified material and sought to block its publication. Now, a federal judge ultimately allowed the book to be published. And again, this is obviously a political thing that's going on here. You know, Trump has been going after anybody and everybody that's publicly said anything negative about him or his administration. And he is, that's what he's got Pam Bondi for, which is kind of funny. If you noticed in that clip that I just showed, Trump said that he was the top law enforcement officer. And if you go to, the Attorney General's website, they, in fact, are the top, law enforcement officer. In this particular case, Pam Bondi, not Donald Trump. Now, of course, he likes to say things like that because he gets them all worked up and ready to go. So it's kind of interesting. Let's move on to other news that's late breaking before I get into the crux of this podcast. This gentleman here is Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, and Pete Hegseth has just fired him. And why he did that, again, another person that has gone against what Donald Trump has said. And it's kind of sad, but he fired this Defense Intelligence Agency Lieutenant Jeffrey Cruz just a couple of days ago. The firing follows a June preliminary assessment from the DIA, the Pentagon's main intelligence wing, of the Iran's military strikes, which prompted vicious backlash from the Trump administration. Now, Pete has fired this guy because, and he's fired a few generals here recently, and he's purging all of these generals, especially some of them that were under the Biden administration. And it's kind of sad why he's doing this, but here's the bottom line, why Cruz got canned. It's because during one of the recent press conferences, when Trump said that, when they did the bunker busting missile attack against the Iranian uranium deposits, and Trump said that it was a total obliteration of the site. The whole site was totally destroyed. You remember that? And, of course, this guy's a military expert, General Cruz, and he said it did do a lot of extensive damage, but they probably can rebuild the site within 6 to 8 months. He's being honest, and he's looking at actual photographs and intelligence. But as you know, Trump said it was total devastation, annihilation. So, as you know, in the Trump administration, you do not, under any circumstances, say anything that is negative to the president. In other words, if the president lies, you lie. Well, this general wasn't going to do that. So what does Pete Hegseth do? He fires him because, he's loyal to Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump wants to lie and, extend the truth out a little bit, that's his privilege. And if he does, by God, you better do it too, or you're not going to have a job. So there you go. So that's what happened. So it's just, just the nature of how things, happen. Let's move on. All right. Yeah, during their second meeting in the Oval Office this year, President Donald Trump said the U.S. would be willing to support European efforts to police and do any deal that they can with the Ukraine leader, Vladimir Zelensky, and he expressed his gratitude, and he, of course, wore, as you can see, better clothing this time around. So, they had this meeting. And Vice President J.D. Vance did keep his mouth shut as Trump hosted Zelensky and top European leaders to energize months of stalled U.S.-led efforts to halt Russia's 3.5-year-old war. The tone and style of the sit-down was different from when Ukraine's president was there before, where they actually hounded him and, shut him down on anything and everything he said. Following the talks, Trump said he would work to arrange a meeting between Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And sadly, as you're well aware of, that meeting did not go anywhere after it was done. There was a lot of pomp and circumstance, and a lot of positive things were said, and most of the European leaders simply wanted peace talks, and they wanted ceasefire before they did anything else. And, of course, it was also said that Ukraine would not be allowed to join NATO, although the European leaders want Ukraine to join, NATO. And but they did have all the support for security guarantees for Ukraine. The United States would not put boots on the ground, but they would offer other type of military support for Ukraine. Now, and that, of course, pleased Zelensky, who said the U.S. was offering such a strong signal and was ready for security guarantees. Now, what has happened here, of course, since all of this has taken place, is the fact of the matter is that Trump has now backed off of seeing any trilateral meeting with Zelensky and Putin, first and foremost, and then himself. That's the trilateral meeting if the three of them get involved. He's backed off on that. Why? Is because Putin has continued to start bombing Ukraine again. As you know, Putin is playing Trump. And for some reason, Trump cannot figure that out. As much as he tries to wine and dine Putin, Putin loves it. I mean, he will take the spotlight each and every time. He will get out there like he rode in the beast and waved at the crowd and everything's fine and dandy. And then Trump puts on this thing with the European leaders, which is great. You know, it was a positive step. I always offer transparency when Trump does things right, and he did do things right there. But again, he's backing off because Putin is just filling him full of BS, you know, as he's playing him. And why Trump can't figure this out is beyond me. But there is not going to be any trilateral meeting or even a bilateral meeting with Putin and Zelensky anytime soon. I mean, as much as Trump would like to do that, he, you know, as you know, during the meeting, he made a phone call, stopped everything, and told Putin what was going on, which I don't think was a smart move, you know, what they're talking about. But, you know, he went ahead and did it anyway, and then called them all back into the Oval Office and, oh my God, you know, Putin's going along with this. He thinks it's going to be great, you know, and then things fall apart. The bottom line of all this, folks, as you well know, is Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants it so bad that he can taste it, because Barack Obama won one, and now he wants one. And of course, they're not going to give him one until, you know, there's actually something to give him a prize for. And he's trying so hard to, you know, do something to get this going, but it's just not happening. So, you know, it was great that they had these peace talks. It was great that the European leaders came together, and of course they want peace first and before anything, or at least a ceasefire, which is not happening. Trump has tried to do a ceasefire, and then it's not going to happen. And he called Putin in the middle of the frickin' thing and said, "Hey, you know, let's do that. Let's get this put together." But didn't happen. Moving on, President Donald Trump also, as perhaps maybe you know or not know, is declared another national emergency. And this was done because of the tariffs that Canada is putting on some of the northern states that get their electricity from Canada because of the tariffs. So he declared this national emergency because of Ontario's imposition of a 25% surcharge on electricity exports and further threat to cut off exports entirely. The emergency declaration will allow the United States to alleviate the abusive threat from losing electricity imports from Canada, Trump wrote in a post on social media. Donald Trump said in a response to the surcharge he would double existing tariffs on Canada and Canadian steel and aluminum, and warned Canada that it would pay a high cost if Ontario cuts off the flow of electricity to the United States. And he goes on to say, "Can you imagine cutting off the flow of electricity that so affects the life of innocent people as a bargaining chip and a threat?" Trump wrote. "They will pay a financial price for this so big that if it will be read about in history books for many years to come." Ontario put a 25% fee, as I just stated, on its electricity exports to New York, Michigan, and Minnesota in response to Trump's tariffs on Canada. Ontario's Premier, Doug Ford, said he was applying maximum pressure on the United States over its tariff war and threatened to cut off exports entirely if Trump keeps increasing tariffs. Ontario was the largest exporter of electricity to the United States in 2023. Trump already declared a national emergency on January 20th, unlocking the emergency authorities to fast-track permitting and to seek to retain production of baseload power plants. Trump has yet to offer more details on the electricity emergency, but the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, can issue emergency orders that would allow power plants to run at maximum capacity or waive some environmental regulations in instances like this. What we have here is, you know, this tariff war, and it's kind of sad that, you know, from time to time, you see this little pissing contest go on between the United States and Canada. Now, it's not really funny, but here's what you got to understand how this all started. Donald Trump started this tariff war with Canada, as you all know. For decades, we've had absolutely no problem with our friends from the north. Never. And then he starts this tariff import war with the Canadians. And what do you expect Canada to do? Just sit there and take it and say, okay, charge us tariffs. We don't care. They're going to fight back. He bullies these people. Remember, he wants Canada to be our 51st state, and he wants to take Newfoundland and all these other countries. And so, the United States has nobody to blame but themselves for this. They really don't, and so Canada is just doing what they should do. They're going to tariff back. You're going to put tariffs on them. We're going to give you tariffs back. And then he says, you can't do that. Well, why not? You're doing it to us. I really don't blame the Canadians. I really don't. I don't know what you expect them to do, but they got to do something. Moving on with other news, Texas Republicans have approved Trump-backed new congressional maps for a lengthy fight Texas Republicans did on Wednesday. They will take up a new state congressional map. All of this passed. Remember, they locked up the one Democratic lady that wouldn't sign anything, and they just locked her in the chambers, no restroom privileges or anything, like a bunch of little babies. And of course, it's designed to flip 5 Democratic-held U.S. House seats in next year's midterm elections. After dozens of Democratic lawmakers ended a 2-week walkout that had temporarily blocked its passage, Republican state legislatures have undertaken a rare mid-decade redistricting at the behest of President Donald Trump. He's the one that told Texas to do this. And as you know, all these Republicans, when he says jump, they all say how high. And, like here in Florida, all the Republican House representatives and our senators, they come back here and saying how hard they're working for the citizens of Florida and that this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But when they get back into those chambers in Washington, D.C., it's, we'll do whatever you want, Donald. The hell with the citizens. We're going to do whatever you say to do. Now, Trump, of course, he's seeking to improve his party's odds of preserving its narrow U.S. House of Representatives majority despite political headwinds. The gambit has triggered a national redistricting war, of course, with governors of both parties threatening to initiate similar efforts in other states. And, of course, the leader of all this is Governor Gavin Newsom, who has jumped pretty much to the top of polling to, run for president. So, he's making some positive headwinds in that direction. And, of course, Donald Trump, he doesn't like that. That's why he wants to send the National Guard back into Los Angeles, maybe. And he's and bottom line here is, what do you expect, the Democrats to do? I mean, seriously, if you got gerrymandering going on in Texas and here in Florida and other Republican, red states, so they can put more of the representatives into the House of Representatives, the Democrats are going to fight back. And it's sad that it has come to this, because both parties, I should really say, shame on you. The district should be for the people to vote on, not for both parties to have to maneuver to do what they got to do. Our democratic system here in the United States is going straight to hell. That's really what's going on. We, the people, don't have any say-so in anything anymore, hardly, because of all of this. The both parties want to put in who they want to put in. And the Republicans started this BS. So, what are you going to do? It's either, fight or, lose. And it's those with the most toys wins is what's really going on here. So, it's like I said, it's a damn crying shame that this stuff has happened, but so it goes. Moving on to other news. This lady here is Lisa Cook, and President Donald Trump's Housing Regulatory Agency said Wednesday that the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook, who sits on the Fed Reserve Board, will have to resign or else be fired for cause over what she claims is evidence, or what he claims, is evidence of a mortgage fraud by the central bank official. To be honest, I think she needs to resign quickly, said Bill Pulte, director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He says, I think she will have to resign, or I think she'll have to be fired. The remarks came after Trump, reacting to Bolton's letter asking the Department of Justice to criminally investigate Cook, demanded that the governor must resign now. Bolton's central allegation is that Cook claimed 2 different properties as her primary residence at the same time. You cannot do that in America, he said on the agency's chief, who has aggressively backed Trump's frequent attacks on the Fed and its chairman, Jerome Powell, whom I'll be talking about here in just a second. He assisted the actions were all political. There's no funny business going on. He said this is straightforward stuff, and if you commit mortgage fraud, especially in here in America, you'll be prosecuted. But he tore into Cook at the length on social media earlier Wednesday morning. Lisa Cook is cooked. Well, that's really good there, Donald Trump. He wrote in a post. And Bolton wrote that he believes that Trump has a cause to fire the Fed governor, who was nominated by former President Joe Biden in 2022. Central bank governors can only be removed for cause under the law, which is generally understood to mean serious misconduct. Though he appeared to suggest that Powell, not Trump, could be the one to do it, I'll tell you this, Jay Powell, he has a chance to do the right thing by the law. I mean, this is just, this is common sense, what he needs to do here, Bolton said. But the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, folks, states explicitly that the board members can only be removed by the president. Moreover, the Supreme Court suggested earlier this year that the president does not have the authority to remove Fed governors over policy disagreements. So let me back up there. Board members can only be removed by the president under extreme circumstances, the Supreme Court suggested earlier this year, but the president really doesn't have the authority to arbitrarily remove federal governors over policy disagreements. So you see the difference here? Cook's letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi is the latest example of Trump administration airing allegations of mortgage-related wrongdoing against the president's opponents. The Justice Department is investigating Senator Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, too, and New York Attorney General Letitia James on similar grounds about, this mortgage issue. It also shows Trump expanding his efforts for the feds to slash interest rate, a pressure campaign that is so far mostly focused on Jerome Powell. Now, what I want to basically bring up here is, again, as you can see, this is all political, going after, the Federal Reserve board members, and going after Jerome Powell. And this is what I said. As you know, the feds meet yearly in Jackson Lake Lodge in Jacksonville, Wyoming, in Grand Teton National Park. And Jerome Powell has now finally said that he may lower interest rates in September, depending on the economic climate and looking at more data. He didn't talk too much about Lisa Cook at that meeting, but again, the president really, in this situation, doesn't have the authority to fire Lisa Cook. Jerome Powell would have to be the one to remove her, and of course, the investigation is ongoing, so we'll have to see what happens here. It's sad that you get into these witch hunts that you see here, and it's sad that Donald Trump, he cannot take any criticism. He cannot take anybody talking negative about him. This even goes into the media, which I'm going to jump in here in a moment. He has to have full control, and he wants everybody to bow down to him. This is why we're getting into an authoritarian type of country. I've been around a while, and I've never seen one president act like he does. It's sad that he can't take some kind of, this is why we live in America. It's okay to talk negatively sometimes about your president. That's our First Amendment rights. It's either his way or the highway. And people, this is why we have a two-party system. At least we're trying to have one, to where a lot of American citizens have a different point of view, and you're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But this guy won't take anything negative about him. It's either, if you do, by God, I'll get rid of you. And it's sad that he has to be that way. It's like a little child, And speaking of little child, Donald Trump has hailed an appeals court's decision to throw out a nearly $500 million judgment against him in his New York civil fraud case as a total victory, which again is wrong. That's not true, which, as you will see in here, he called the judge who imposed the fine to be admonished for abuse. And in a lengthy post on Truth Social, again, he goes on his little Truth Social thing and and the president called the case a political witch hunt, which it wasn't. He claimed everything I did was absolutely correct, which it wasn't. The sentence still is it's held solid. It's just a fine is what they threw out. And he says it was correct and perfect. Per my earlier post on this, it was far from a total victory for the president, though. The appeals court was splintered, with 2 judges finding that Trump was properly held liable and the case vindicated a public interest, but did find that the penalty was excessive and that violated the U.S. Constitution. So 2 other judges also found that there was authority to sue, but a new trial was necessary because the trial judge should not have held Trump liable for fraud at the outset. Only the 5th judge said the case against Trump should have been dismissed. So there you go. Like I said, the fine, which I thought was was excessive. So now he doesn't have to pay anything, but the case in itself is still intact. So he still has the charges against him intact, but the fine was thrown out. So I think you can see how where this is kind of gone. So there you go. Now, moving on, as you're all well aware of, the National Guard has been deployed to Washington, D.C., and 3 Republican-held states said Saturday that they're deploying more guards, hundreds of more National Guard, to support Donald Trump's administration effort for overhauling policing in Washington, D.C., through that federal crackdown on crime and homelessness. Now, West Virginia said it was deploying 300 to 400 Guard troops. Tennessee has sent troops up there, while South Carolina pledged 200, and Ohio says it will send another 150 in the coming days, marking a significant escalation of what's going on there in Washington, D.C. So it's just crazy, but there you go. They're sending more troops. Now, what is interesting here, Pete Hegseth has just announced, just yesterday now, that all of these National Guard troops who are supposed to be there in support capacity only can now start carrying their firearms. And some of these National Guard troops that are coming up from these southern states are also military police capacity, so they will also be armed. So you folks in Washington, D.C. need to make sure that your P's and Q's are good and that you don't say anything that's going to agitate these guardsmen and guardswomen, because they will now be armed. So things might be changing there. Now, police officers have set up a roadside checkpoint on 14th Street Northwest on this past Wednesday in Washington, D.C. President Trump deployed federal officers in the National Guard in order to keep peace in the D.C. He's now also suing the mayor of Washington, D.C. because he said that she inflated the numbers on how crime was down. That was down, 23% or something like that. He said that's all BS. He said crime is actually running rapid and there's criminals all over the place, and we've been arresting them because you won't. And of course, he's been removing the homelesses. He's been tearing down the homeless camps there. They bulldoze those over and ship those homeless people to who knows where. And they did return the Metropolitan Police Department back to the chief of police. That was one thing that they did. So this thing is getting crazy, because now he wants to do what he's doing here, and he wants to move it all on over to other places like Chicago, maybe back to Los Angeles. And you've got all these guards, National Guard people coming up from these states. And ladies and gentlemen, it's getting scary. You never thought you would see the National Guard armed, especially in the United States of America, in our cities, saying that crime is running rapid and that we need these guard people here. So again, authoritarian type of situations with this present administration sending the National Guard to our nation's city, walking around now with rifles and ammunition. You know, you're going to see them at airports and stuff. What does this look like to you, ladies and gentlemen? Does it look like, you know, some of these things that you see in some of these third world countries, some of these communist countries, where you see not just police officers, but people in, you know, military uniforms carrying, you know, automatic rifles and pistols and just staring you down like, why are you here and what are you doing here? It's scary. I mean, they think that's going to make our country safe. It's going to make people want to stay in their homes and not even go out and do anything because they're scared to death they're going to get shot. You know, that's what it's all about. Moving on. So Trump also has doubled down on baseless claims that mail ballots are corrupt. In his press conference with Ukrainian President Zelensky just recently, you saw the clip, the news images earlier. So Donald Trump has spent a chunk of time when he's supposed to be answering questions about what he's going to do and not do with this trying to get a ceasefire, answering questions about his earlier threats to end mail-in voting and the use of voting machines. He said today that we're going to start with an executive order. He loves those executive orders, as you're well aware of. That's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. Everything's corrupt if it doesn't favor him. If it does favor him, it's wonderful, the best thing that's ever happened. If it's anything that where he's not getting the most votes or his Republican Party's not getting the most votes, it's corrupt. So it was a winding detour where he repeated a conspiracy that the Democrats prefer mail-in voting because it was the only way they could get elected, which is not true, and to promote what he described as transgender for everybody. See, right there you can tell he's biased. He doesn't like the LGBTQ community. He doesn't like people who are handicapped. He doesn't like the elderly. He only wants white privileged, hardworking corporate people who have billions of dollars. Those are the only people that are important. Everybody else can go to hell. That's basically what they think. You know, for open borders and crimes, which he says is a new thing that Democrats love. The president's remarks included a number of false claims, namely that the U.S. is just about the only country in the world that uses mail-in ballots. That's not true. Dozens of Western Democrats use mail-in votings, including Canada, the UK, and Germany. They use mail-in ballots, but he doesn't do his research. Most European countries offer some of the mail voting, and over 100 countries let their citizens vote by mail when living abroad, according to data which is from International IDEA. Look it up, folks. It's, you know, as they say, Google it. So, you know, the president has in the past voted by mail himself. How have you? Trump also said that voting machines are inefficient and costly, adding that paper ballots allow for results to be released the same night. Election officials and experts routinely say this is inaccurate. Now, Stephen Richer, is the former recorder of Maricopa County in Arizona, debunked a number of the president's falsehoods about voting machines as highly accurate. They are highly accurate, in other words, and they're fast and they're inexpensive way to process voting. So, again, what's going on here is the president is scared to death about the midterms, and he's trying to do everything he can to make sure it favors Republicans. This is what it's all about. He wants to do everything he can to make sure Republicans win, and whether it's legal or not, he's going to make sure that they win and stay in power. Because if he doesn't, Project 2025 will start falling apart. You know, the House of Representatives, and that's really about the only shot the Democrats have of regaining anything, is the House. They don't stand really a chance in hell of taking over the Senate, not at this point in time. But they stand a really good chance of regaining the control of the House. So, and that just scares him to death. He does not want to see that. So, you know, and speaking of media, another thing that's going on here is this lady, and her name is Nicole Wallace with MSNBC. She's quite popular, and Trump, right out of the blue, for no reason at all, started cutting her down. And as you know, and Trump just has recently said this, MSNBC, which is getting ready to change its name, and CNN, which are, two of the major news networks along with Fox News. He said that MSNBC is terrible news. That's why they're low rated and why nobody watches them. And CNN, they're terrible. They're low rated. And he called Comcast Concast, which owns NBC, among other networks. So why he went after Nicole, I have no idea. But he claims that she's going to be fired soon. And Donald Trump took to Truth Social this past Sunday, August 17th, to be specific, to unleash a shocking rant against political commentator Nicole Wallace, vowing that the host will soon be fired. She hasn't. The drama began when Trump made a cryptic post that read, Bella, lending many Truth Social users debate what he meant there. What does that mean? In the replies, the commentator shared a photoshopped image of Wallace with a Karen haircut and a red nose alongside the captions, "Clown News," and Nicole Wallace is afraid of losing her job. "Get her a WAMA ambulance," Trump replied to the post, writing, "She's a loser with a bad ratings who is already thrown off of the View, and she's going to be fired soon." She currently hosts Deadline, which is about the White House. It's called Deadline the White House on MSNBC, though she previously co-hosted ABC's The View, joining a long-running daytime talk show in September of 2014. She exited the series after just one season. Before her TV career, Wallace served as the White House communications director for the second term of George Bush. So obviously she's a Republican. And Trump had earlier raged against those who had criticized his recent meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, writing, "It's an incredible show how the fake news violently distorts the truth when it comes to me. There is nothing I can say or do that would lead them to write or report honestly about me. I had a great meeting with Alaska on Biden's stupid war, a war that should have never happened," he continued. So he goes on and on and on. This is one of the most insecure presidents I've ever seen. So when anybody says anything against him using their First Amendment rights, he bullies them or sends his cronies after them or does all he can to get them fired. I mean, this is what happened to CBS. CBS was behind a rock and a hard spot when they wanted to merge with Skydance, and they needed the FCC's approval. So what did CBS do? They, got rid of some people. They got rid of the late night talk show host, and they just bowed down to him. So, CBS, and I've been watching CBS Morning News lately. They have really toned down their stuff on Trump, and they talk about other little things, movies that are being made, and they're doing a lot of fluff stuff now. So, CBS is done what they said they're going to do. "Oh, we won't say anything bad about you, and just let this merger with Skydance go through, please." Which is Paramount. Paramount and Skydance merged for the film division, and of course they own CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting Systems. For all of those you over there know what that is, if you're over 55 or 60. So. It just goes on and on. He wants to control the media, and he wants to control the people of the United States. He wants to control government, and he wants to control Washington D.C. And so it goes on and on and on and on and on. And dear God, I don't know. Like I said, this is a new for me, and I've been on this planet for a while. So a judge on Thursday found that Elena Hava was unlawfully serving in the role of acting U.S. Attorney of New Jersey after President Donald Trump sidestepped typical processes to keep her in charge. Judge Matthew Braun said Abba has not been the rightful temporary U.S. Attorney for New Jersey since July 1st, a ruling that follows two criminal defendants in New Jersey challenge her appointment in court, alleging it was unconstitutional. Wow. So faced with the question of whether Miss Hava is lawfully performing in the functions and duties of the office of the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, he says, "I conclude that she is not. Braun wrote in a 77-page order. Hava, Trump's former personal defense lawyer, had been serving as the interim U.S. attorney, but when her term expired last month, Trump and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi used loopholes in federal vacancy laws to install her as acting rather than interim U.S. attorney. One of the defendants in the district, Julian Gerard, alleged that the moves violated his constitutional rights because of the string of unconventional actions it took to attempt to keep Hava in the role. Braun, an Obama appointee serving in the middle districts of Pennsylvania, agreed and found Hava could not prosecute Gerard or other defendants who challenged Hava's position. The judge said the criminal cases could proceed in the court district, just not under Hava's purview. So, just move it to a different attorney general. This has also been an interesting case because last month the New Jersey judges made the rare decision to decline to extend Hava's term and instead appointed career attorney Desiree Grace to the job. Trump and Bondi fired Grace, withdrew Hava's nomination as permanent U.S. Attorney General, and then reinstated her as acting U.S. Attorney, which they said kept Hava in charge for at least another 210 days under federal statutes. So there you go. Again, this is another case of Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, who does his bidding. He tells Pam what to do, and she does it. Do everything you can to make sure my people are in place. Make sure my attorney generals are there and all over the United States, that we've got everything covered. So whatever happens, we can control it into our favor. I want Republican judges, and I want this, and I want that. And this goes back to the Bolton thing. It's probably a Republican judge that signed off on that search warrant, to get in there. And, this vengeance is mine attitude that we have been seeing is scary. It really, really is. So it breaks my heart that you have to see this kind of stuff. And like I said, for all the years I've been around here, I've never seen such authoritarian government stuff that's been happening, and breaks my heart. It really does. All right, let's move to our top story. And our top story today, folks, as we get down to winding down this edition of The Right Has Left, is going to be dealing with what's going on here in Florida, because there's a couple things that's just, again, really, really sad. And we're going to start off with, the rainbow sidewalks that we have here in Florida. Well, a lot of these sidewalks are no longer here. And that is because the state of Florida, which they said are under orders from the U.S. Department of Transportation, says that they need to be removed because there's no longer political statements, which they call these rainbow sidewalks for the LGBT community, can no longer be around. Now, this particular rainbow sidewalk that you're looking at is in front of the Pulse building, which, as you know, was a large massacre of people that were shot and killed, and that was put there in memory of them. Now, other rainbow sidewalks do exist in the state of Florida. Many of these cities took defiance to the state of Florida's orders and said they're not going to paint them over. So our illustrious governor went ahead and decided, then if that's the way you're going to be, then I'm going to send my own Florida Department of Transportation people out, and we're going to repaint them over ourselves, if that's the way you're going to act. And he did just that. In the middle of the night, when nobody's around, they repainted the sidewalk in front of the Pulse building, and because he said it was a safety concern. Now, that rainbow sidewalk was there to mourn the people, as I said, that were killed in the Pulse shooting. It happened in 2016. And Orlando had that sidewalk put there. And the State Department painted over it. And even though 49 people who were killed after gunmen opened fire at that, gay nightclub in June 2016 in what was the largest mass shooting in United States history at the time. Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer said he was devastated by its removal, calling it a cruel political act on social media. This crosswalk not only enhanced safety and visibility because of its beautiful colors for the large number of pedestrians visiting the memorial, it also served as a visual reminder of Orlando's commitment to honor the 49 lives that were taken, he said. Carlos Smith, who is also an openly gay state senator, said that the Florida Department of Transportation had ripped the rainbow colors off of the city sidewalks in the middle of the night. In a video where he said was standing in front of the repainted crosswalk, he went on to say that the department had illegally vandalized a city property without providing the city of Orlando notice or getting their approval. I cannot believe that Governor Ron DeSantis' administration has engaged in this hostile act against the city of Orlando. He said it is the response in the video. DeSantis wrote on X, "We will not allow our state roads to be commandeered for political purposes." So honoring 49 people who were killed in the Pulse shooting and having that one sidewalk in rainbow colors is a political statement. I beg to differ, Governor Ron DeSantis. There are other rainbow sidewalks, like I said, across the state of Florida, and he is sending his crews to each and every one of those cities that have defied the orders and left the rainbow sidewalks intact. He's going to go repaint each one of those, and he's going to bill the city for doing it. Now, I'd like to know who's going to go down to Key West. Key West has a rainbow sidewalk, and they've also refused to have them repainted. Now, what's kind of interesting here, and I respect the people in the city of Orlando, they have been using colored chalk, and they said they will continue to do so, and just color in the sidewalk with colored chalk each and every day. He said the city can, the department can go back and wash them off or whatever, but they'll just go right back in and color them back in again. So this stuff is so petty, and this is why I do this podcast. So much of this stuff that is happening is so damn childish and petty. Not only across the U.S., but here in Florida, some of the stuff that Ron DeSantis does is so damn childish and petty. It's just sad. It really, really is. And those sidewalks didn't bother one damn soul. It's just that they're going after the LGBTQ community. They make up some of those stupid excuses. And then, they do stuff like this. Those sidewalks are not bothering anybody. It's just that their ideology, white privilege people, that's all we want that does this stuff. We can't have this. And then they boasted, they go and boasted on Christianity and all that stuff, and then they turn around and do this. Like the Bible says, look at the plank in your own eye first. But, they won't do that. Now, one thing that has happened that is kind of good that I'm pretty excited about is Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, a federal judge has ordered the closure and dismantling of Alligator Alcatraz Immigration Detention Center in the Florida Everglades, halting further construction and new detainee emissions. I can't talk today. U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams sided with environmental groups who sued out, alleging that the site violates environmental laws by failing to undergo necessary reviews and endangering wildlife. The ruling requires the removal of generators, sewage systems, and other equipment within 60 days, with Florida and the Trump administration, of course, they're going to appeal that. Like, we got to have that there. We got to have some place to where these thousands of detainees that we're rounding up that are U.S. citizens and committed no crimes. But, we got to get rid of them because they entered the country illegally maybe like 40 years ago. So, key aspects of the judge's order: halts operations. New detainees are prohibited from being brought into the facility. Requires removal of the generators, gas, sewage, and other waste receptacles that must be removed from the site within 60 days. It orders dismantling, temporary fencing, and lighting already installed. That has to be removed. Sided with environmentalists, the judge agreed with environmental groups that the facility's construction in the Everglades violated environmental laws and failed to perform required reviews. What people tend to forget is the Florida Everglades is a protected area. It's federally protected. It's kind of like a national park. You can't go in and put all this crap in there. Now, they took this abandoned airstrip and did all this within days, because Ron DeSantis, who is a mini Trump, he likes to do and mimic everything the president does. He opened up another camp up just on the other side of Jacksonville, towards Tallahassee. They opened up another camp there, and it is true. This camp was put together in the Florida Everglades in days. And another thing is you can't find out who really is running this. Is it the feds running this, or is it the state of Florida? Because FEMA, as you all know about all the billions of dollars that was pulled from FEMA, well, FEMA, of course, provided all the trailers and stuff for the guards to live in, and they did most of the funding to have this done. And state of Florida basically, runs it locally. So, but you can't get a clear answer on who does what. I think they did that on purpose. But kudos to this federal judge. Now, of course, they're going to appeal it and say it's necessary and all this and that. But we'll find out what's going to happen here really soon. Now, as I wrap this up, this last story breaks my heart. And I want you to listen to what I'm going to talk about here really closely. Because I can guarantee you, and even in my own family, each and every one of you out there probably has some relative, some child that has some disabilities. So listen to this. The Florida Board of Education voted to sunset certificates of completion for students with disabilities who attended kindergarten through 12th grade in schools in the state of Florida. These certificates were awarded to students who could complete coursework needed for a diploma under a new Florida law, House Bill 1105, and the board's vote. Students with disabilities will no longer be able to get a certificate of completion at the end of their school career starting this year. Students with severe disabilities who can't earn a standard high school diploma will leave school without any formal recognition upon graduation. Now, Amy Van Bergen ran the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida and is now the mom of a son with disability. She said her son Will, that's his name, wouldn't have been able to get 2 jobs he works at a law office without his certificate, and she's worried for other students like him. People with disabilities already have a higher rate of unemployment and a lower rate of job placement after school. Now, without a certificate of completion, securing employment could even be harder. Without that certificate, they are potentially going to lose eligibility to all sorts of opportunities after high school, whether that's even taking a college placement test or pursuing developmental or vocational programs, she stated. Even in Ohio, the dismantling of funding for disabled students is taking the forefront. Watch this clip.
School board meeting, she was shocked to hear this comment from State Senator George Lang, who called into the meeting to discuss school funding.
We know for a fact, and I'm going to make the numbers up. Don't hold me that these numbers are right, but we know for a fact that it costs more to teach a student with severe disabilities. I'm going to make a number up. Let's say that cost is $50,000 a year. It may be 20. I don't know. Compared to a student who is comes from a family with loving mom and a loving dad who put education at a high level, it costs a lot less to educate those students.
It was the insinuation that parents who have children with special needs don't love their children as much as parents who have neurotypical, normally developing children.
I took parent concerns to State Senator Lang, who responded in a statement. He said, quote, "Let me be clear that I did not say or intend to say that children with disabilities do not come from loving homes. With that said, we have to recognize that every child learns differently and brings unique circumstances to the classroom. As a result, the cost to educate each child will not be the same, but we have a responsibility to provide every student with an equally high-quality education. That's what I'm fighting for."
So as you can see, these Republicans, again, because they're saying, well, it costs too much to educate these people with disabilities, people with Down syndrome and stuff. We got to use this money for people who can actually, get a high school diploma or go to college. That's what we got to focus our money on, and homeschooling. We want to focus on people who have middle upper incomes and have normal kids. That's what we got to do. That's where it's got to go. Well, it's too bad that these Down syndrome kids, aren't smarter than they are, but we don't have any money to, really take care of these people anymore. This is why I left the Republican Party. I was a Republican myself for 51 years. After I've seen the changes, especially in this, about 7 months after Trump was put into office, I went, what's going on here? And again, the dismantling of education and taking care of children with disabilities is all Project 2025 stuff. And as you saw with that clip there from that senator from Ohio, it's all about money. It's all about money, and they want to invest it in people who can actually learn something according to them. And it's a sad. Like I said, in my own family, I've got relatives who are somewhat slow. They have some development disabilities, and I'm sure each and every one of you out there has a child that is the same way. And if you are watching this and you live in Florida, God help us, because it's crap like this. It's just damn sad. It really is. Anyway, that's my podcast for today. This is Roy with Right Has Left podcast. I thank you for joining me, and stay tuned for next week's episode. Until then, you try to have a good week. Take care.